Welcome to Tech Talk, a podcast dedicated toward building community for technology managers in AV and IT. My name is Steve Greenblatt. With me today is my co-host Mark Lavecchia. How's things going today, Mark?
Things are very good. How are you, my friend?
Very good, very good. We're fortunate today to have a guest with us. That's Erik Wilson, Director of Engineering from Western AV in Southern California. How are you, Erik?
Good. Hey guys, how are you?
Very good. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So, in the past, we've spoken a lot about the role of the technology manager, trying to build some awareness, try to share some of the experiences that we, Mark and I, have from our perspectives, and some of the techniques and tips that we've encountered. And today, what we hope to do is share some insight from an integration point of view. So, I'll kick it off to Mark and let him provide some background as to Erik's involvement with technology managers and some of the experiences and successes he has, and how he can share his knowledge to benefit this community.
Well, thanks. And I want to tell you that this is probably one of my favorite parts of the business, because I can't say this about anybody else, but I've been in this business for over 20 years, and the one constant has been Erik, of all things. Erik and I go way back to our days working at excuse me, a projector manufacturer in Titusville, Florida, by the name of Ampro. And just as a point of emphasis, when we got to know each other back then, because Erik was working in the back. You were putting resistors on boards and stuff, if I remember correctly. Yes. And I was the marketing communications guy, and we ended up getting to know each other back then. Back then everybody used to smoke, so we'd go out on our break. They'd get the breaks at 10 and 3 or whatever in 20 minutes, and we'd go out and smoke, and we get to know each other and talking and hanging out. And he worked for a company called JOS, or one of the big sellers of the Ampro projectors was JOS Projection. Actually, one of the only sellers was JOS Projection. But over time, Ampro started going sideways. I moved on, Erik moved on, and as time would pass us along, I ended up working at Crestron in the West Coast office, and Erik ended up getting hired by what was a new iteration of JOS to come out there and service the units. Because over the time, we went from working in the boards to working in burn-in. You were working with the projectors. You became a real projector guru. And now, all these years later, Director of Engineering for Western, which is one of the premier design build integrators in Southern California. All these years later now, BMA is working with Western, providing controls programming, and that's where it takes us to today. Because now we're working together at universities and end users where Erik has direct contact with technology managers. And what we wanted to do was talk today about the integrator standpoint, because, Steve, as we've talked in the past, it's a little bit different on the East Coast. Out here, the technology managers have a tendency to work directly with the integrators, and then the integrators will work either from a consultant, from a bid standpoint, or from a direct design build, which is more Erik's bailiwick. Now, Erik has worked with us on projects at Chapman University, at Ketchum University, Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. We've done a number of rooms together. And what we've come to learn through Erik is that technology managers are a lot smarter than they used to be. I shouldn't say what they used to be, but in terms of the type of end user that we've had in the past. And I wanted to ask you, Erik, over the years, you've seen them grow, and I'm curious, as you've seen them grow into the business, for you, what was the first thing that you started picking up on them in terms of your role and how you can help them?
From my standpoint, the first thing I noticed is, working with them is, the jobs just started to become much more efficient. From a installation standpoint and a design standpoint. And what I mean by that is, technology managers, they're very savvy. They're up to date with all the new products and the new, technologies for the most part. So, because they have their needs already defined very, very tightly. It was easy to come in and work with them, and the process was just a lot smoother. And that was one of the first things that I realized, is that, the projects that we were doing with them, at the end of the project, we looked back and it was a lot more smooth than, some of the bids that we worked on, and even sometimes even design build stuff, with working through, a sales team. I realized very quickly that it was very efficient, and the end product seemed to always be exactly what they wanted, and there was, no mistake about it.
Well, and one of the things that you brought up to me recently that I thought was interesting is the difference here is typically in an integrator's model, you have salespeople that may be coupled with an engineer and so forth. Salesperson's knocking on doors, trying to get the business, meeting with the customer, talking about scope and stuff like that. That's not the case really with technology managers. I think maybe if the salesperson gets in the door, that's fine. But after that, and I'm a sales guy, so I say this with all due respect, they don't have any use for salespeople, generally speaking.
No, and a great example of that is Chapman University. We just did our first project, be it was a small project, but the salesperson did get us in the door. But the salesperson that got us in the door, she's new in the industry and she's not tech savvy. So she gave us the opportunity. But now the relationship that I have with him, and we joked about it yesterday, is if I was to leave my role at Western AV and I went to work in the real, not the real world, but for a university, I would be a tech manager. So the conversations that we have are very to the point. And there's that level of respect that they have for me because we can talk to technology, and usually they don't want to talk with the salesperson unless it's a really, really tech sales-oriented salesperson. They just don't add a lot of value, and but we still need them to get us in the door, because that's not something that I want to go out and try to do either. I don't like told no.
So what did you find when you started working with technology managers? One of the things we've talked about is how they have a tendency sometimes to be set on equipment. They see equipment, they're used to it, they're putting it in. What does an integrator, especially somebody in your position, bring to them as a value that they may not get somewhere else?
Well, the core of our business at Western AV for a long time was doing a lot of bid work. So we had the opportunity to work with a lot of the big consultants in Southern California. And when you start working with the consultants, a lot of them are set in their own ways and very specific on what they want. So we had the opportunity to see a bunch of different manufacturers, whether from an audio standpoint, for example, if it was biamp or if it was PV or if it was sound structure, whatever it may be, we're forced to work with those products. So my product knowledge is very vast because I a lot of times am forced to work with products that I probably normally wouldn't work with. And tech managers, from what I've gathered, they have a tendency to get comfortable, whether it's with a Crestron or, with whatever it is, they get really comfortable with the technology, and there might be something better out there. And the hardest thing with them is just been proven, to them that, there are other things that are available, and showing them different ways to do stuff that they might not do because it's outside of their comfort zone. And persuading them to, let's just take a chance on this and trust me. So
a lot of times, though, are they coming to you with specific needs, or are you offering them solutions? How does that dynamic work?
Well, Steve, one of the best things about working with tech managers, I think I alluded to it a little bit earlier, is that they are very specific what they want. And sometimes in a design build process, or even working with a consultant, a lot of stuff gets lost in translations. And if I had $1 for every time that I went to do a training with an end user, and they're like, well, this isn't what we want, because they're so removed from the process, and there's all these other bits and pieces to get to that end product. With the tech manager, you don't have that, because they're involved, they're engrossed in the project from the get-go. They have a very good understanding of what their client wants, whether it's the hospital or the university. So when we go to them, they already have a really good idea of what they want. Now, there might be a little bit different ways to do it, as in integration and control. There's the proverbial, there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat.
Sure.
So Whether it's, learning from my mistakes with other projects on, hey, that's a great product, but, this is what we've seen, this is why we might want to do something a little bit different, and, being able to bring that to the table. But the one thing about tech managers is they always know exactly what they want, and they're very, very, engrossed in the process. So.
One of the things we talk about a lot, Eric, you and I talk about a lot, but I also talk with Steve, is as a sub, as somebody that's providing a service to you, our first job is to see the end of the job. Right. When we start it, we see that we have the end in mind, and we know that our goal is to get that job closed out. And what I've noticed is in your relationship with the technology managers is because of what you're saying, we're able to finish up a job, because we've done jobs where you've called me up and you're like, all right, listen, we just got done commissioning the spec project, and the customer went through everything, and I have a legal pad of all the changes they want to the system now that it's up and going, because it's not really what they want. When you're working directly with tech managers, you call me up and you go, look, this is what they want. This is how they want the room to function. This is what they expect when they turn it on. This is what they expect when they're pushing buttons. So this is how it's going to run. We do submittals. The customer is already involved in the process. So by the time we get done with the submittals and the approvals and the commissioning of the system, we're out, because there's no surprises. I mean, there's going to be little things always in a job, but in the end, there's no surprises. What we talked about in the beginning is what we delivered in the end, and they go, hey, that's what I asked for. Now let's go do another room. Right.
Absolutely. And, a lot of that, the best example is the work that we've, both together, you mentioned it earlier at CHLA. The first project we did there was $1 million, and since then we've done, all the rooms after it. But, after working with them in the continued relationship, working with their tech manager, I already know what he wants, and he knows what to expect from us. And, and if there's any, things that we fall short on, he's not scared to let us know, and it's a great relationship. So.
Well, and there's a lot to be said about what you just mentioned, which is the relationship. There's a difference between I have this room and I got a job, I want to go sell it. I'm going to sell it and I'm going to put it in the room and I'm going to go sell another room somewhere else now. That's not really what you guys do. No. You go into this with the relationship in mind. Yes? You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said before, a lot of the jobs that we were doing before, when we first started out, 9-10 years ago at Western AV was mostly all bid work, and we developed a relationship with the consultants that, we had to prove ourselves every time, because we didn't have the sales guys going out and getting sales or new projects. So we had to really perform in these bid projects to continue to get these projects. But as the economy's changed and the dynamics has changed, the bid projects have been really, really tough. So we're re-gearing ourselves and really focusing on, this relationship business that you're talking about. And the relationship business that we've had, the reoccurring business, is all been with tech managers. I mean, the 4 biggest jobs that I have done in the last 5 years have all been with these tech managers and the relationships that we built. So it's more of a relationship business than it is just going out and having a price, because that's hard to do business like that sometimes, or a lot of times.
One of the things Steve and I have talked about in the past, in fact, one of our last podcasts, it was interesting because you and I chatted about this recently, and I wanted to get your take on it, which is one of the challenges that we've learned from technology managers that they face is the scheduling of their projects. Now, when we talk technology managers, we're generally speaking universities and so forth, although that's not the case. But you mentioned CHLA, which is the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. So you work with their technology manager. But where it relates to the universities, they have a couple of challenges. Number one is they may know what they want. They know the system they want. They know the equipment they want. They even have the design that they want, but their budget isn't available until it's at the very last minute. Now that's going to drive when the equipment gets ordered, when your services get ordered, and when things get started, because that deadline doesn't change. That deadline's a drop-dead deadline. But what you were telling me was because of the relationship you have with them, this really doesn't come into play for you all that much. You still have good management over the project, yes?
I think part of it is the relationship that we have. Part of it has been that we're not dealing with state universities and tight budgets, some of the stuff has been private schools, and most of the private schools, when they have money, they spend it, and they call me, and they have the budget. That's not been an issue for us with any of the companies and tech managers that we've been working with. CHLA or Children's Hospital in Orange County or Chapman or Ketchum University, any of these private entities, they already have their budget in mind when they call us, and it's not hey, we want to do this, in 2 years from now, how can you help me develop that, over the next 2 years? I haven't had to do any of that, thankfully, so.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we talked about last time was just the cyclical nature of our business and the fact that budgets for a university, a lot of times they don't get released until maybe July 1st, and then it really gives you a very compressed time period. Have you experienced that, and is there some planning or I think the value of that relationship probably comes into play there. Are we correct?
Yeah. A good example is the project that we did recently at Chapman. I mean, they were very specific what they wanted, and we already had the time frame when the school got out for the summer. We already put the time in, and again, working with the tech manager, the advantage to that is they realistically know how long something takes. They know what the procurement process is, where, a lot of people, they don't understand that, and they don't understand that all the nuances as they get involved in, possible problems that we could have when we go to do the job. So the tech managers, because they're savvy, because they live and breathe that in that world, they're aware of that. And where somebody might say, hey, if I get you a PO, can you be out here in 2 weeks? I have 2 months with them, because they know the hurdles and they know the potential problems. So it's a lot easier from that standpoint as well, because they know. Because it probably at one time they've pulled cable, and they've seen conduit and said, oh yeah, it's not going to be a problem. Then went to pull cable and realized that there was no room in there, and then you had to completely revamp everything. So that's one of the other advantages as well that we found.
Sure. What are some tips that we can that can be provided to a technology manager to help them work more smoothly in those situations? A lot of times we as a service provider, we're trying to listen and understand what we can do better, but what are some things that they can do that may help ease that relationship or make a project go more smoothly?
The tech managers themselves?
Yeah.
I would say the tech managers just to have faith and trust the integrator that you decide to work with, and realize form everything's based on a relationship and not on price. And Mark and I talked about it yesterday. Again, going back to the advantages of working with tech managers, they understand the value in a good integrator, and they're not always price driven. We do a lot of projects where we'll put something out, and the first thing that somebody comes down and says, well, we can buy that display at Best Buy, or we can do this, or we saw this on the internet. And that's not a way I want to start a conversation with anybody, already getting on the defensive side. With the tech manager, that doesn't happen, again, because they know the value that we add. And my advice to any tech manager would be just to embrace that relationship, find a relationship that works for you, and embrace it. And once you have that trust, then the end product is always really good.
That's great, and I would assume then that relationship continues, and you turn it into more of a support situation, because we've been talking about that as well. That the project doesn't end at the completion; it's for the duration of the life of the system.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the big things is we're again back to the how we started our business. Everything that we did was revolving around how good we did on our last project. We were only as good as our last project, basically. So with the tech managers, it's a relationship. Once we put in a room and hand them off the closeout documents, it's not see you later. Well, it's see you next week or whatever. So it's an ongoing relationship, and and absolutely, like you said, it's not just about getting that system in. It's about getting that system in, handing it over to the service department that the tech managers know as well. We've brought them in because they're as important as I am, probably more important. Well, hopefully not always as important, because that means stuff's breaking. So if it's routine maintenance, yeah, that's one thing. But we're big on bringing our service team in and helping develop that relationship. And again, it's really one big happy family at the end of the day, is what we like to say. And I have four really good examples of that we've been basing our business over the last couple of years, and I can honestly tell you, I would much rather develop one relationship with a tech manager or with a situation like that than work on 10 bids and deal with that process.
And that relationship becomes important long term, because what happens is these are technology managers. These are people that have been showing up at Infocom and shows like that in pretty large numbers lately. But now what we see them doing is saying, "Hey, Eric, I'm going to be at Infocom. There's a couple of products I want to look at long term. Can you come with me? Give me some feedback and stuff like that." And that, I think, because you deal with different products along the way, that relationship with them is such that they're going to reach out to you now. This isn't a billable thing, okay?
Right.
But this is a part of the relationship, so that you go together, you walk at different manufacturers, and a lot of times, even with us, they'll come and say, "You know what? We're looking at this product, the Acme, blah blah blah. Have you used it? What do you think of it?" and stuff like that, which is key, because now we're adding value to them beyond just, like you said, "Well, I'm putting a Vizio in here. Can you pull a cable and plug it in for me?" And that's where that relationship starts to go long term, where you're able to be a source of information for them, be there when you need them to be there, and maintain them long term. I know we also do a lot of asset management stuff, Fusion, RMS, and stuff like that, which is another part of this equation, as bringing that in, because they may have it set up. But when you work with them, you can see their plan long term, yes? So you know that maybe in these rooms we want to make sure that we plan for a Fusion. We want to make sure that we know right now we're not going to put, say, a codec in here, but we are long term, and what that does is it gives you the opportunity to build for them long term and always keep that relationship strong by having them come back, and knowing that they can rely on you, because you've already seen where, I'm getting a little ethereal, but you've already seen where they're trying to go.
Right.
And so you're prepared for it and can direct them in that manner.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where do you see trend-wise? Because we've talked a little bit about how at least some technology managers are starting to become more educated and take on more of the development of certain parts of the project on their own, whether they're doing a design, whether they are going to do the programming themselves, and any of those different skill sets. I think they're becoming more attainable or technology managers are investing a lot more, because I think that it for some it's important, whether it's because of cost or just because they want to be more autonomous. Are you experiencing some of those trends?
Well, we're working with most of the tech managers. It would be nice if they were always just the audiovisual person.
Sure.
But usually they usually come from the networking side, and then they get, to the AV, and like my contact at Ketchum, he's a photographer, and he was in charge of all their media arts, and here's AV that's thrown in his lap. Now that's not to say he's not AV savvy, but he's very AV savvy, but he leans on me a lot, for the technology, that I know, so. Yeah, they're all a little bit different. Everybody's a little bit different. They all have different backgrounds. My contact at Children's Hospital, he came from the video conferencing side, worked for a huge company. He was in charge of all the video conferencing. So he's really specific in his needs on that. So he leans on me for the other stuff that we do. One of the points that was on the webcast that we were trying to make was about the examples of finding solutions, and that's been the biggest thing working with the tech managers to me, is finding solutions, and that's been really, really, really helpful, because they're, for example, like at Ketchum, we had some pressure on capture HD recorders, and at the first we wanted to bring these in because they didn't want to use something from like media side or whatever. So we brought in these capture devices, and they worked really well. But the problem with the Capture HD boxes was the back-end support. You know, the media side and Echo 360 and some of these other companies involved. So, you know, I had to really lean on him and his networking team to try to develop this back-end support so that they could take video and they could post it and, you know, do all the stuff. So without working with the tech manager in that situation, it would have been horrible. And I think we ended up righting the ship with his help and with the engineering help, and so I mean that's like a situation that working with a tech manager that, you know, is involved with the networking, is involved with everything else, and can kind of bring everything together was really beneficial.
That's great.
Yeah, and we talked in the past about how, you know, one of the keys to a successful project is whoever is in the beginning, and this is something I know you do as your model. Whoever is there in the beginning to discuss this, the scope and the sequence of the project should be involved all the way through. A lot of companies, they have a bad habit of, they'll put, say, a salesperson in there. The salesperson goes in, looks over a room, puts together a proposal, gets an order, and then hands it to somebody that was never involved in that process. And so as a result now, that one of the strengths is we see in our business is if somebody like you, an engineering manager, is involved in the beginning, then you know what's expected at the end. And I think that's the same value that a technology manager brings to their employer. I'm here in the beginning, I'm driving what we want, so in the end, everybody gets what they were looking for, there's no surprises, and if we need to rely on each other's strengths, like you're saying, then that comes into play really well. I find it to be probably the best part of our business right now, because in the end, we want to get the job done. We want to get it signed off. We want to move on to something else. We don't like hanging around in a room because some little thing is giving us a headache or somebody didn't expect something to happen. Did you find your model have to change? Because I think in the past, like you said, it was bid. So now all of a sudden you've become more engineering driven as opposed to salesperson banging on doors.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And one of the things that I can really say is that working with this, you know, this environment with the tech manager and such, the continuity between your team with that tech manager is really important. And now that I kind of think back and reflect on what you just said, every one of the projects that we do with the tech manager, there is that continuity. You know, we use the same project manager that knows the tech manager. We usually try to get the same install guys because they develop a relationship. You know, I'm always involved, and, you know, maybe sometimes too involved. I'm not, you know, our model is that whoever's doing, you know, the engineering, who's ever part of the process goes out and does the training. You know, and we have discussions with, like, the sales guy should go out and do the training. Well, I think that that's a bad idea, because I want to go out and do training with somebody that knows the system, right? But the continuity absolutely is something that they really like. It's that comfort zone. It's that, you know, just knowing that they can pick up the phone and call me and throw an idea, you know, past me, and not, you know, call in and talk to some engineer they've never talked about. It defeats the whole purpose of the team, you know, because really what happens, in my opinion, is that, you know, that tech manager is just really a part of our team. You know, he's just an extension of our team. And that continuity is very important.
And they call you now. That's the thing that I find is interesting, is they're not picking up the phone and calling the salesperson and saying, I need this widget.
Oh,
when they need something, they're calling.
You know, and that, again, that's probably my worst trait, is that I take on too much, and that's probably part of what my boss wishes I wouldn't do. However, the relationship that I build with them, yeah, they don't call the sales guy. The sales guy has nothing to do with it anymore. You know, I mean, we've probably done close to $2 million worth of jobs for Children's Hospital LA, and the sales guy Steve, he helped with the first one, but I don't think, you know, he's had any conversation with them since. They just call me and I do proposals, which is a little bit different than most, because, again, you know, my background, I did sales, I've done sales engineering, I've done everything, so, you know, but that's just how it works in our situation. But the continuity is very important. If the sales guy's involved, that's fine. I mean, I'm not an anti-sales guy by any means, but they need that continuity, and they want to work with the same team, and they want to know that they're using the same guy, you know, because, again, it's all about the team. It really is.
Yeah, I think you touched on a lot of good points, and actually, coincidentally, I went to a panel discussion yesterday. I was telling Mark that was put on by a local manufacturer's rep, and they had 4 technology managers sitting on the panel, and basically they said that the key that they find is A, the relationship, and B, making sure that you're a part of each other's team, and if that works, and if you can have that type of relationship, that's where they see the value. So I think that you just reiterated it, and I think that's a good theme and for a good takeaway for our listeners.
Yeah, no question. And I think, how are we doing on time, Steve? I think we're rolling on down.
Yeah, we're going to be wrapping up shortly. The one thing I wanted to just key in on also, Mark, just for you and just kind of bring things full circle, is I know you guys have a relationship. Do you want to talk a little bit to that and how that also could be some value to our listeners, and how technology managers can benefit from the relationship of bringing in additional parties?
Well, I would love to, because Erik and I think Erik and I have a special relationship, and what I mean by that is it really goes way, way back to my beginning in this business. And at first, it was like, hey, you're in California, yeah, it's good, I can do some. I was selling Crestron, and he would call me up if he needed something from the Crestron standpoint, but he was very self-sufficient. Ultimately, when I started up BMA, it became, hey, I want to do some programming. He's like, well, we've got our programming and stuff, but we'll reach out to you when we need some help. And it as that part of the relationship began, it was a completely different relationship, because now we could talk about football, and we could talk about technology and hardware and RMAs and stuff, but now he had a beat on his customer, and so he would call us up, and he would still, to this day, he'll call me up and he'll go, just any 20 minutes, okay? Here's what I've got. This is my room. This is what it is. This is what they're doing. This is where it's at. This is what we did before. We're putting this in. We're going to go here. We're going to go there. This is my budget. How does it sound? Great. Okay, I'm going to the customer. We're going to be talking this. I need to bring him submittals. He's got complete grasp on everything, and most importantly, he's very straight with the customer in terms of using a company like BMA. So when we show up, they're not standing around going, well, who the hell are you? What are you doing in here? And we don't actually do a lot of on-site for Erik. Erik's team does a lot of the commissioning anyway. But what happens is that he's very straight with his customers in terms of our involvement in it. When we're needed at a high level, yes, we go to he'll bring us into meetings to go through submittals and make sure we're part of the process. But we refer to it internally as friends of the family. Erik will call at any given time, and our guys know that whatever he and his team need, we're going to get that to them as quickly as we can within the time frame that's needed, because he's got a grasp on the customer. What I don't get from Erik is, oh man, I've got this room, it's built, it's got 2 days left. Can you send a guy out here to program it? That's just not a part of their model. But because we've done all the rooms he was talking about at CHLA, we've programmed all of those rooms. So when he calls us up and he goes, hey, I'm doing a CHLA, it's like room 103, but it's going to have this instead of that and 2 displays instead of 1. We know where we're going. We know the layout, the functionality, the expectations of the system and stuff, which allows us now the familiarity. Same familiarity that a tech manager gets from an integrator, the integrator is going to get from a sub like us, because we know each other now. We can get in, we can get out, we can move on and get on to the next project. And it's great to have that involvement on a regular basis and be, again, part of each other's team. Sometimes we're seamless to them. I don't know that we always are involved with their customers. But they're not afraid to bring us in to talk to their customers if that's needed. And it's just a service we provide to them that they can provide to the tech managers.
That's great, and I guess another good example of where standardization and consistency comes in, because at least in my experience as well, once you've done rooms for a customer and you've kind of established a baseline, I think that you begin to leverage that moving forward, and hopefully then you can just focus on what are the challenges involved, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel each time.
Well, CHLA was a little bit different because, quite frankly, when we did the first project, they actually brought BMA in themselves, because what they wanted to do was to standardize on programming regardless of what integrator they were going to use. So they brought BMA in, and obviously I didn't have an objection to that, but I had nothing to do with that. So they brought them in. However, since then, we've been the only integrator that's done work up there, so it's worked out good.
Yeah,
That's
and
awesome.
they don't call, and CHLA doesn't even call me anymore. I write, I send letters, I put flowers, nothing. They just talk to Erik.
That's great. That there's some power there.
Yeah, but it's been a great relationship for all these years. Not just from a business, from a personal standpoint, but this is where the success comes in our business. You know, I remember, I don't know if Erik remembers, there used to be a guy in our business years ago, to close this up. He used to be a guy in our business named Charles Pintard. Charles Pintard was just an old school sales guy, and he would pound on us, even in our early days at Ampro, former Barco dude, and he would say, it's all about the relationship. No matter what goes on anywhere else, it's all about the relationship. If you get the relationship solid, then you can do anything. But if you don't build that relationship, then all you're doing is chasing problems and tails and issues and punch lists and stuff. And it starts and ends with that. And if there's anything that I can push towards the technology managers is, do not be afraid to tell your integrator that you're in this for the relationship. You can get hardware. We know that. It's a problem in our business. They can get, right, Erik? They can get anything they want.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no hardware that they really can't get anymore. I mean, even stuff that before you had to be dealers for, you know, there's ways to get it, and there's other companies that'll sell it at, you know, 3 points just to, you know, increase their numbers and, you know, hope that they get the integration part of it. So they don't have a problem getting it. And you know, I agree more than anything about the relationship. Just to really hit on that, that's the only way that this model works. And that's why we're, you know, really focusing on that, you know, and just because it's so much easier to do business with that relationship than it is just to kind of come in and install a room and kind of run away and hope that they call, or maybe they don't call, and just try to find another one. That's how we used to do business back in 2000 when I worked at MCSI, when we were part of that train wreck, and that's how we did business. But there was no relationship involved. It was get another job, and really didn't matter if they liked it or not. We didn't care if we got the last 5% because we had so much other work that we had to get that it didn't matter. But you know, we're not doing that anymore, and the relationship business has been such a pleasure to do, and that's the only way that this works, because it's all about that relationship with the tech managers.
That's great. Those are some good closing words. With that said, Erik, thank you so much for joining us today. It's really been a pleasure. I feel like your insight has been very valuable, and I'm sure all of our listeners will get a lot out of it. Can you just close with any final remarks, and also just let everybody know how to reach you?
You can email me, Erik W at WAV1. It's ERIKW at WAV1.com. If you have any comments or whatever, I don't have any Twitter. I'm not really that big on social media. I'm kind of old school. But yeah, I have an email address, and you know, just the words of advice to any integrators out there is, you know, it's a great way to do business, but you have to be patient, and you have to bring your A game. You hear Tiger Woods say that all the time, and you cannot work with the tech manager if you don't bring your A game. If you bring your C game, they'll find somebody else. So if you want that relationship and you think that that's valuable, make sure to put your best foot forward, and you'll have success.
That's great. Thank you. Mark, I'm sure that you would agree that we have a lot to chew on here, and I'm sure that this is something that we can carry on in a future discussion.
Without question.
Any final thoughts from you, and also let everybody know how to reach you?
No, I think that my final thought is that I never thought there'd be a day that I'd be hanging out on a webcast like this with a guy that I used to hang out in the back of Titusville, Florida, having smokes while he was trying to figure out his Friday night date.
Well, hey, one thing I wanted to say before
here it comes.
You're talking about smoking. The difference is that you were out smoking with your tie and your suit on. I was upstairs smoking with all the ladies with lead solder in my other hand.
That's exactly right. I was the Mark on.
Radio.
And that's when Mark had more hair too.
Yeah, where was OSHA back in early 2000? I'm smoking with lead solder in my hand.
That's exactly right, and it was especially in that humidity. Remember, we go out there in 99% humidity, light a cigarette, inhale, and go. I'm still smoking though.
That's
but
right.
It talks to the relationship, and it goes to that relationship and how important it is after all these years.
Yeah.
And
Even though you're a Bills fan.
Yeah, well, at least I'm not a Raiders fan, so they got that.
I'm not. I'm a Chargers fan.
Oh, you're not a Raiders fan this week? Oh, okay, I got it.
Oh, the Chargers are 5-1.
Oh, go Chargers! That's
Yeah,
it. Go
exactly.
Chargers! Right, I got you. I'm with you, brother. But thanks for having us. Again, my name is Mark Levecchia. My company's BMA Software Solutions. You can reach me at Mark M-A-R-C at bmasoftwaresolutions.com. Thanks, dude, for joining us. I appreciate it. Steve, you want to roll us out?
Sure, absolutely. So thank you guys both, and it's been another great episode. You can reach me, my company, controlconcepts.net, and Twitter is at Steve Greenblatt. But most importantly, check out our soon-to-be fully developed website, techtalkav.com. And any technology managers out there listening, please reach out to us. We'd like to hear from you. We'd like you to get involved. This is done for you. We have a LinkedIn community that is private that we will give access to those who qualify, and we're please sign up for a newsletter and so forth. But we really want to get everybody together and leverage some of this information. One housekeeping note: unfortunately, the Infocom Connections show in Philadelphia was canceled, which we talked about in our last episode. But we do look forward to those types of opportunities to get together in person. So until next time, thank you for listening, and we will be in touch with another episode very soon.